Afternoon. Thank you, members, for turning out on this lovely afternoon. I'm sure we'd all appreciate it if the temperature accompanied the sunshine. That would be nice. I expect that Steve Sims might join us in a moment because I think he just gets off the bus at 1 o'clock, so we shall see if he comes through the door. Right. There's nobody to welcome from the public apart from our gentleman of the press. Hello. Obviously we are revisiting documents here, so first and foremost, are there any declarations of interest, please? No? I have no urgent items unless the Chief Executive has. No. In that case, we'll move on to Part 1, Reports Requiring a Decision. Agenda item number 3 is the scheme of delegation, which we are revisiting to here. So, obviously there was a further workshop which some members attended. Some members gave their written comments. Before I'm very remiss, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned we have 3 apologies today. Councillor Guy specifically asked me to mention that he was away on council business for the IFCA, and we have received apologies also from Councillor Mrs Peacock and from Councillor Molson, who has a work-related commitment. Councillor O'Neill, right, I wasn't aware of that. Okay, so apologies received from Councillor O'Neill. Right, so Part 1, Reports Requiring a Decision, the scheme of delegation. As you know, as I've just said, we had a workshop to discuss this. Very good. Welcome to Councillor Sims. Good. I don't propose to say any more about this other than to invite your comments or your thoughts on this scheme of delegation. Councillor Daly.
Chairman, something seems to have happened to the numbering of the paragraphs between the version we had before and this version now. If we look in the contents, number 2, general provisions, but all the paragraphs underneath it are 1 point something.
Yeah.
That's correct. It appears where I've made the alterations, it's not picked up properly on the numbering. Yeah. It's a simple way of simple remedy, but I can.
But yeah, I think you'll have to go through. I mean, I'm just picking that as an example. The whole thing is quite different in the numbering.
I mean, this went through the DPP. This document as drafted now, and it was circulated with the members with ample opportunity for discussion to take place on it. In terms of the numbering, for that one provision, I believe it's only that one.
No, the whole of 3 seems to be missing.
Indeed, Councillor Daly, if you go back to it, so Section 1 starts on 1.1 and goes through, Section 2 then goes 1.1 and goes through, Section 3 goes 1.1 and goes through, Section 4 goes 1.1 and goes through.
But it should be 3.1 or 2.1.
Exactly. Not necessarily.
That's what it was on the document before.
I'm happy to change the numbering if you'd like me to change the numbering, Councillor Daly.
Yeah, it's made it difficult to follow through with the remarks I made because the numbering is different. It's hard to find, and the page number, of course, is different. So, yeah, that really needs correction.
If members agree that all the numbering should be corrected, are you happy for the officers to take it away to do so?
Yes, I'm assuming that would be amended before it was published.
Councillor Davis, did you wish to come in on this?
Yes, Madam Chairman. This is actually a clear mistake. If you look at, I requested the one where the alterations were made, and the previous examples of the document that we've had quite clearly show that each heading is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so it becomes, say, 5, 3, 16. There is a clear error here, and all it has to be is corrected and acknowledged and corrected.
Yes, thank Thank you. Councillor Billsborough.
Yes, Chairman, I share Councillor Daly's views on this numbering. I had some problems with trying to compare the old numbering and the new numbering. That's all I'll say now, but it did confuse me and take a lot of time.
Okay, well, on the grounds that this error has been recognised, are members happy for it to be corrected before the document itself is published? Is there a consensus on that around the table, please?
Shall I propose that? Or?
Yes, thank you. I think that would be simple. Thank you. So proposed by Councillor Daly, seconded by Councillor Mrs Grottick. Those in favour, please show. Anybody against? Thank you. Right. With that in mind, are there any further comments, please? Councillor Daly.
Oh, sorry.
Are there any other comments to make other than the one that has now been addressed? We are asked, the recommendation is that members should approve the scheme. Sorry. Councillor Mrs Grottick, sorry.
Yes, I'm sorry to take up everyone's time, but if we could turn to page 23, perhaps the monitoring officer could just clarify for me the position of the Children's Committee, as the officer obviously has the duty to carry out the functions of the authority in its capacity as a local education authority. And I'm only using the theoretical observation that should the committee come to a different view, how do we move forward on this one? I mean, I'm really not trying to be difficult. I'm genuinely asking for clarification on how that situation would move forward amicably, obviously.
So the Director has the statutory functions underneath the Act in order to carry out certain functions specifically in relation to safeguarding of children, etc. Ultimately, the decisions of the committee would stand as decisions of the committee, but where there is an overriding safeguarding issue, then the decision of the Director would ultimately take precedence.
That's fully understood, but if it wasn't a safeguarding issue, then hopefully moving forward in tandem, the officer would implement and work with, obviously, the decision of the committee.
Correct. Yeah.
Fine, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Mrs Sowell.
Chairman, obviously Mr Burriston has explained it. I was just going to say that the Director of Children's Services has responsibilities above and beyond the remit of a committee around safeguarding. So, so that she does have to have, the current one does have to have delegated powers. Other than that, Chairman, I was going to propose the recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dorrington, seconded. Thank you. It's been proposed and seconded with the amendments as previously discussed. Those in favour, please show clearly. Thank you. Is there anybody against or any abstentions? No, thank you very much. Then that is carried. Thank you. Moving on to item number 4, the draft corporate plan. Again, this is a document that we are revisiting. I thank the members who attended the workshop recently and who submitted written comments. May I know your wishes, please? Councillor Mrs Grottick.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'm referring to the Chief Executive's comments, summary and introduction on page 86, and his comment that we may well face financial contraction in the years to come. And I would just like to say that I do find it worrying that the Chief Executive has quite rightly identified that over the coming years the authority will have to continue to identify new ways to reduce costs. And at the risk of revisiting issues that have been debated many times, our largest cost is staffing. And regrettably, in my view, we have not really addressed staffing issues. I do recognise we have statutory duties that we have to comply with, but nevertheless, most authorities have seen some recognition that staffing costs must be addressed, and ours, regrettably, do not seem to be doing so. So I'd just like to make that comment.
I think it's fair to say that we have started to address staffing issues through the reshaping of the authority. However, no sooner have we lost positions from the authority than the government has required of us to add extra roles and responsibilities. It is like the myth of Sisyphus. We are constantly pushing the boulder up the mountain on this one. We do our best, however, as an authority to trim our costs and to limit staffing wherever reasonably possible. I would like to point out to members, however, that we are trying to function as an authority at the moment understaffed in many areas, and this is not helping the authority, particularly but not exclusively in the finance department. Councillor Bilsborough.
Yes, Chairman. Going on to page 86 of the report, paragraph 4.2, if we read that, it starts off, doing things in more efficient ways will not be enough. And then it goes on to say halfway down that over the coming years, the authority will have to continue to identify new ways to reduce costs of all its functions. It also says, above that some services may have to stop. Now, I can understand the warning here, but I just hope that when we look at these ways of saving money, that we must preserve the frontline services. I know it's easier said than done. What worries me is that next month the Chancellor of the Exchequer is going to issue or do a budget where he's going to show how he'll save billions. I suspect he will pass the buck to the local authorities to say your grants are going to come down by so much, and you, local authorities, have got to find ways of saving money. It's passing the buck. I'm not blaming the Chief Executive report. What I'm saying is there's a warning here that I don't like.
Well, I'm sure all of us in an ideal world would like to have a lot more money to spend than we've got at the moment. But yes, but we have to be very cost conscious. Some of us remember Gershon, which I particularly loathe.
Value and
Councillor Mrs. Suttle, did you wish to come in?
I was just going to say, over the last few years, as a local authority, we have been very fortunate with our financial settlement. And actually, but there might come a time, maybe 12 months' time, when we're actually welcome to the real world of local government. So, I mean, none of us want to sit here and all decisions will be taken on their merit, but we can't say that we will continue forever delivering the services that we currently do. And sometimes it's equally important to stop some services if those services have actually run out of steam and no longer achieving.
Yeah. And as we've said many times around the table, some services that at the moment we might just deliver a 5-star service, we might have to deliver a 3-star service or a 2-star service. We have to cut our cloth accordingly. Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you. I was just going to sort of refer you back to the page 95 and the actual title of the document. It talks about a draft corporate plan phase 1, and I just wondered if the Chief Exec could actually perhaps explain what that means.
Did you say page 95?
No, 85.
85, right,
sorry. 85.
Thank you, Chairman. Very, very happy to provide some comments on that. The reason why the title is phase 1 is that the plan as presented provides the broad direction of travel and the priorities for member. A plan is only as good as its backup documentation, and clearly the next phase or the next part of the plan is to deliver business plans that really demonstrate and set out how members' plans will be delivered. The requirement to provide a detailed medium-term financial plan to back up the corporate plan, and finally a corporate risk plan that will set out the risks for members. So that's why I called it phase 1. This is really the start for a suite of documentation that will be coming to members over the next few months.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, obviously I trawled through the document again last night, and the vast majority of which I'm perfectly happy with, but there are sort of one or two niggling bits that I mean, it's often as not to do with the language as much as the commitments, which do jar a bit as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I blame myself to a degree because I did miss 3 of the workshop sessions, and I wish I hadn't. And I think, although there were some regular attenders, I think others like me couldn't or didn't attend, which did mean that the Chief Exec had to do more than his fair share of heavy lifting, I think, with this document. I mean, it's absolutely vital, I know, to have an overarching strategic plan for the islands, and I'm glad it seems to have gone to 6 years now, whereas I think the original timing was 3. I mean, we're taking us through to 2021. But on the other hand, I do think it will need to be kept under pretty constant review, because, let's face it, we've got a Chancellor's budget coming up in July, and then we've got a spending review coming up in the autumn, and we may need to sort of, cut our cloth. I mean, the Chairman's hinted as much. As I say, ideally, I would like a little bit more time. I did actually mention at the last meeting that perhaps the document could go to the key committees and then come back in August.
Councillor McCarthy, on that point, may I just say that I did actually read your email to the people around the table who decided to press on with it, but your email was given an airing.
No, you did promise you'd do that. I just wanted to repeat it. Ideally, I think there's still a little bit more work to do on it, but if that's not the view of everyone else around the table, I'm happy for the thing to go ahead.
Councillor Bilsborough.
Yes, just one point, Chairman. I agree with Councillor Saville that we have been fortunate over the years in our grants, and that we may have to make cuts. What appalls me, for instance, in Cornwall, they have gone to the extent, for instance, in Penzance, of closing public toilets. And they have been doing this, and I hope we never get down to that level of closing public toilets or even charging for them. And the other thing which I'll mention in passing, which is obvious, of cutting down care for the elderly, or the code interest tax. But we have to watch that.
We'll have to discuss each case on its merits as we come to it at the proper time, but yes, we will always be very reluctant to cut back on our services. Councillor Mrs Saville.
Thank you, Chairman. I think members have got to realise that this is a very strategic documentation, and there will be checks and balances all the way through. Committees, etc., will be involved when some of the larger, shall we say, more ambitious things within the plan will come to fruition. A lot of this stuff is actually being done already. A lot of our early intervention and prevention and within budgets, and is actually key for cutting our costs at a later stage. So I think members do need to look at it as a strategic document. I actually don't agree with Councillor McCarthy that it should go to every committee, because they have their own plans which will sit under this, and that will be the time to focus in on those particular services. I think, those of us who've been fortunate to have attended the workshops have been sort of to have our say, and I think, daytime meetings can be quite awkward for people who are, working, as it were. And I would like to hear from them. But I do feel we have got to move forward. We've deferred this once from the previous full council. I think, actually holding this meeting today is costing money. And I think we need a consensus. If certain words are not right, or we're not happy with that, I think sometimes we have to sit back and actually accept that. We want a consensus to move forward rather than to get stuck in pulling things apart. Those are my views, Chairman, and I do hope that some people who haven't been fortunate to attend the workshop will have an input into it. But actually, I'm willing to accept the proposal put for us today.
Thank you. So that's a recommendation. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I'll second that, yes.
Thank you. What I was going to say was, in any case, even though not everybody could be present at all of the workshops and sessions, of course, written comments would have been perfectly acceptable, and in some cases were received. Not every member took the opportunity to write in their comments. Councillor Mrs Grottick, would you like to add to the debate?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we have given a lot of time to it, and Councillor Saville's right, it's a strategic document and it's good to be ambitious, and we have got to move forward. And I have listened to colleagues, because I did have two continuing concerns. One which was that we couldn't mention the cost of transport, but I have listened to, and freight. I have listened to colleagues, and I do understand that as a private company provides those services, we have limited room to manoeuvre beyond supporting their efforts to give us a good service. But on the other issue, which is that tourism is not mentioned at all, I'm afraid I really don't want to sit down and support this document, because I think it has to mention tourism. Tourism is our key industry, and if we could just put in a piece perhaps where growth, employment and skills are listed, that might be a way forward. I'm not suggesting we need a lot about tourism, but to have it nowhere mentioned in a corporate plan when our islands are virtually dependent on tourism seems to me rather strange. Might I suggest, or perhaps others would like to suggest a different form of words, that we could put in, whilst recognising that tourism is our key industry, the Council will nevertheless encourage and endeavour when possible to create a wider economic growth and well-being throughout the islands, or some such
Could
wording.
you just make clear where you want to insert it in the document?
I was going to suggest where we go to growth, employment and skills, the first para supporting the strong local economy down to pays a living wage is fine, and that we might then amend the next piece, creating the right conditions for economic growth. I'll be interested to hear colleagues' views.
Councillor Doreen-Smith.
Chairman, I partly agree, and I did think about it when I saw the email that was circulated. But I think, on balance, this is a broad document. Tourism is covered by economy. I mean, the fact that tourism is 80%, 90%, whatever it may be, there's a clear message here that we want to support all forms of economy. The agenda is for growth, and that diversifying the economy is also a priority. So personally, I don't think we need to single out farming or tourism or any one particular thing, because the economy is the economy, and that will change over the years as it has done over the last 200 years. There will be different emphasis on different sectors. I'm not against putting it in. I just think the word economy covers our situation.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Montford.
Thank you, Chairman. The only thing I thought about was where it says creating the right conditions for economic growth, you could put in including tourism and diversification. Don't know what anybody else thinks about that.
Okay, let's find out.
But I'm not
Chairman,
unhappy
yes,
with it as it is, really.
Sorry.
Okay. Councillor
I would second Councillor Mrs Grottick's views on this. I realise that tourism is an important part of our economy, but it is a vital part, and there is no harm at all in emphasising in this loud and clear that above all else, if tourism fails, everything fails, and therefore I do support Councillor Mrs Grottick's proposal that we insert tourism as a sort of flagship item. I think it's important.
Okay, fine. Councillor Mrs Bennett.
Yes, I too would support the wording used by Mrs Grottick. I think that unlike other activities, more than other activities, tourism impinges on every aspect of life here, on planning, on transport, on design of buildings and so on and so forth, and the environment. It creeps into every aspect of life, and it's too important to ignore specifically.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Daly.
Yes, I too would like to support Councillor Grottick's suggestion, because I think that we do need to mention tourism here. Decisions sometimes are made, and perhaps it's just so obvious that we don't even think about it, but we do need to bear in mind that tourism is our main economy, and it's not main by a little bit, it's the big chunk, it's 90%.
Okay. Right. Would you, just for everybody's clarity, just read out the additional wording, please? And if members do vote on this, I would ask you as well to email it to Andrew Thomas so that he can be quite clear he hasn't got it wrong.
Yes, I'm happy to have it amended if anyone else would like to add, but my first thought was whilst recognising that tourism is our key industry, the Council will encourage and endeavour to create a wider economic growth and well-being.
I will second that, Chairman.
Or a wider economic wealth and well-being. Yes, we don't need the A. You're quite right, Chairman.
I'm not clear where that goes, because the Council as such, the word doesn't occur anywhere in the document at all.
Councillor Scott, are you happy that we just amend the wording as long as we are faithful to the spirit of what you say?
Absolutely, that would be appreciated. It's difficult to think on your feet.
We will insert it in the growth, employment and skills column, and if you don't mind, we'll just tinker very slightly with the wording. But
I'd be grateful, thank you.
Right, on that basis, I think we need to take the vote. It's been proposed and seconded to include the reference to tourism. Councillor Mrs Saville? No.
The document as it currently stands, which was seconded by Councillor Dorian Smith. So,
all right, we'll take that first.
But I am willing to accept an amendment to my original proposal.
Oh, that would be.
And I would second an amendment to
Right.
Councillor Savile's original vote.
Such team working is really inspiring. Thank you. Proposed by Councillor Mrs Saville with the amendment to include the extra wording proposed by Councillor Mr Grotrick, seconded by Councillor Dorian Smith. If there are no further comments, those in favour please show. I think that's unanimous. Yep. Yes. Right. Thank you very much.
Chairman, before you leave this, could I ask President what the Chief Executive said when we...
hang on just a excuse me, members. Councillor Daly wants to ask a question of the Chief Executive. Is it relating to this document?
When is Phase 2 proposed to appear? And the financial...
just about the timing of when the next part of the documents will come.
Well, as this has now been agreed, we can now start doing the business plan as soon as possible and the financial plan. I propose that we take the financial plan to the next full council in August. Yes, August.
Okay. Right. There are no reports in Part 2 and no reports in Part 3, so I thank you very much and close the meeting. Thank you for attending. We weren't going to go away backwards or yeah, I know. I thought we were going to, but...
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Yeah.
All right, thank you for coming. I'm just trying to walk, give you a chance to get through the door.
That's what they will do. What time is your next bus? 3 o'clock.
No, he's got bags of time.
Well, I've got bags of time. I know, yeah. This is a bit... Right. Once you switch your microphone off, we'll have a quick chat.